welcome to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO. Inside Higher Ed is one of the most authoritative and influential news sources for those of us who work in higher education, public and private, colleges and universities. It's been around since the year 2004, providing the latest news, analysis, and solutions for the entire higher education community. And joining me from his office in Washington, D.C., is the editor of Inside Higher Ed, Scott Jaschik. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, Scott, I think there's some breaking news about Inside Higher Ed joining forces with another leader in higher education journalism. Tell us more about that.
Yes, Times Higher Education, which is based in London, purchased us. We just announced it on Monday, so it's really brand new news. And for most of our readers, though, you can continue to expect the same things you've seen from both Inside Higher Ed and Times Higher Ed. We plan to talk about ways to collaborate and to grow our services. But if you like what you get from Inside Higher Ed, don't worry, you're going to keep on getting it.
So does that open the door for the possibility of Inside Higher Ed bringing more of an international perspective to your reporting?
Certainly, we get perspectives. We've been running one Times Higher Ed story a week, and we'll continue to do that. But yes, it makes us a global entity, and it's very exciting to be part of Times Higher Education.
And Scott, for our listeners who may not be familiar with Inside Higher Ed or may not even work in higher education, tell us a little about the history of Inside Higher Ed and how you came to be.
Sure. We started in 2004. There were three founders, and we felt that there was a need for a new kind of publication. We were free and online only. And that really worked with people. And still, it's free to get the news every day from Inside Higher Ed. And we have tried to provide the best news. And at this point in time, we have more readers than anyone else.
Yeah, and Scott, you and I have talked before about one of the things that Inside Higher Ed is most proud about is that your connections to the college and university community is very deep and very broad, and you really have your finger on the pulse of what's happening here on the ground at America's colleges and universities.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to love going to all the meetings to do so. Right now, meetings are sort of on hold, and there's a lot of Zoom meetings. But yes, there's no substitute for getting direct information from the people who work in higher education.
Yeah, and you're also very much in touch with policymakers who provide the environment that we work in higher education, the regulations and the funding, accreditation, and I think also making sure that institutions like community colleges continue to provide as open of an access as possible to higher education in our society.
Absolutely. We care very much about community colleges. We know that most college students who get a bachelor's degree, even, the plurality start at a community college. And so it's very important what goes on there. And that's one of my issues today.
Okay, great. And Scott and I have crossed paths at a number of conferences, most recently at the meeting of the New England Commission on Higher Education, and Scott is well known in our industry for his annual top 10 list of issues facing higher education. So Scott, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and give us your top 10 list this year.
Sure. So number one is geography. And I said that geography matters more now in higher education than it did before. What do I mean by that? I mean that it really matters who your governor is and who your legislature is. Now, I'm not trying to be anti-Republican, because particularly in your area, there is a long history of Republicans treating higher ed well, maybe not as well as Democrats, perhaps, but there's a sense of Republicans and Democrats understand and appreciate higher ed. Right now, in COVID times, we are seeing really the opposite of that. In states like Texas, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, we're seeing governors take very anti-higher ed positions almost for the sake of taking an anti-higher ed position. And I think it's changing the environment. I think it affects where people will want to work. It could, create a hiring boom in the rest of the country. And it's also just affecting a lot of very good people who work there. There are great academics in every state, and they didn't necessarily expect to pick the governor, but they didn't really expect the governor to do the things that they're doing right now. So number two is responses to COVID. And here I'm talking about, this has now been going on for nearly 2 years. And it's hard to believe it, but it has been going on for that long. And everything from, I've given 2 speeches at in-person meetings where I had to wear a mask when I was speaking. Those are colleges that take it seriously. And I am happy to wear a mask when I'm speaking because I take it seriously. But then there are lots of colleges where that wouldn't happen, where everyone can do whatever they want pretty much. And there's a huge difference because of that. Number 3, and I've only got 3 COVID issues directly, but COVID is obviously the number 1 issue in higher ed, is Omicron. Look, we've got a real pandemic right now going on. And we are having colleges, when I gave this speech in Boston a few weeks ago, only DePaul was the only university to change its semester. Now everyone, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, lots of people are changing the calendar. They decided to start late or going online for 1, 2 or 3 weeks, and even extending the time that they're online. Now, in Connecticut, Yale has done this, Wesleyan has done this, other universities have done this. And it's a huge question mark over what's going to happen in March and in February. No one really knows. We can hope, and I certainly hope, that this will all pass in a few weeks, but it's not passing yet. And who knows what higher ed is going to be like because of Omicron or, the next virus variant that will come up, and there will be another one. Who knows how we'll respond? Related to that, we also have the sense some people now say, well, we just have to learn to live with COVID. And, that makes sense. If I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, I assume you are. Mm-hmm. So, if I get it, you can say, well, it'll be mild. But there are still thousands and thousands of people who are not vaccinated or boosted. And, who knows how it will be for them. Not so mild, I fear. So this is going to go on for some time. Now, on admissions, I'm going to talk first about 4-year colleges, and I'm going to come back to community colleges later. But on admissions, this year, undergraduate enrollment fell by 3.2%, echoing last fall's drop of 3.4%. Since the fall of 2019, undergraduate enrollments have dropped by 6.5%. That is a big deal. Colleges depend on students for their revenue, public and private alike, through tuition and through state appropriations tend to be based on how many students do you have. But what's interesting this year is it's not really the same cuts every place. Highly selective public nonprofit institutions saw an 11.7% increase in freshman enrollments this year. And elite publics also saw a healthy increase. So what's going on, it's really the 3.2% figure. I fear it is deceptive, although it's true, because there's some colleges that are having a very good year in admissions, but most are not. And community colleges are in trouble. I'm going to talk about them later, but it's really, really hard for them. Now, next issue, men leaving higher ed. This is a important story in all kinds of colleges and universities, and comes up in all kinds of ways. The Rhodes scholarships were just announced. and 22 of the 32 winners were women, more than ever before. This is just representative, I think, of a trend we are seeing. Women are studying harder and are doing better and better. Now, that's great for the women, but I do want to raise questions about how good it is for men. Obviously, it's great if you're at a women's college or if you're recruiting women, but male students are increasingly not going to college. And it's not like they're going, and they're not necessarily, people a few years ago said, oh, well, they're going to the military. They're not necessarily going to the military. Many of them are not going, period. And that is a big issue. The next issue is study abroad and the virus. Many colleges had thought, and a few even started their semesters in the fall with study abroad okay. Many of them got through the fall, but with much less interest than normal. Right now, it is very hard for me to imagine many students signing up for study abroad. Now, I think study abroad is a great thing for people to do. Mm-hmm. I would encourage them when it gets better. But right now, there's no place really that is safe to go. And that's going to really hurt colleges because so many students say that their study abroad experience was among the best parts of their undergraduate education. And they're going to really lose out on that. And so I hope that colleges are going to create programs on campus to encourage a little more of an international perspective for students. Issue 7, broadly international relations. Look at the world today, look at the New York Times, and we have fears about Hong Kong, China, Russia and Ukraine. All of this has an impact on higher ed. Higher ed isn't the first thing you think of, but it affects who's coming to the United States and who may be coming in the future. Our international enrollments new international enrollments have fallen because of COVID, and many are very anxious for them to get going again. Issue 9 is federal policy. The federal government right now is at a standstill, frankly. They can't get anything done in Congress. There's a Democratic pseudo-majority in the Senate, at least if the vice president votes, and a small majority in the House. But they are struggling to get things through the Senate. Now, at the very beginning of the Biden administration, they got a number of things through. They could get a number of things through in the future. But this is a serious problem for higher ed. For those who ask me, when will they reauthorize the Higher Ed Act? I say, don't hold your breath. They're going to really be struggling this year. And if the Democrats lose the Senate majority, which some think is possible, who knows what will happen in the last 2 years of a Biden administration. Issue 9, race relations on campus are terrible, with students dispersed in some cases, temporarily, we hope. They're not interacting, but when they are back, they have problems at every kind of college. Most Black and Latino students don't feel welcome, frankly, by their colleges. Now, even though colleges are doing a lot for them, the students face racist incidents and other things that just keep them away. And issue 10 is community colleges are in real trouble. Because of COVID, community college enrollment is way down, and most community colleges enrollment is still down this year. The kinds of things that colleges are doing to protect their students from COVID are particularly damaging to community college students. Most community college students did not like learning remotely. Now, it's not because they can't do it. I really want to be clear on that. Community college students can do it just as well as a four-year college student. But to study well online, what do you need? You need a computer. Many community college students, their phone is their source of technology. And that's fine, but it's not really to write papers, to do research in the same way. You need a quiet place to study, which many community college students don't have those things. That's why in January, as we've seen colleges announce their plans to deal with COVID, four-year colleges were the first to go online and continued on it. Now, some community colleges are going online because they don't feel they have any choice. But it really concerns me. And if community college students don't go, some have feared they're all going to the for-profit sector. I really fear they're not going anywhere. And that is really dangerous for our society. These students need to find a place at a community college to do well. And I hope they will do so this semester. So that's my 10.
Well, that's great, Scott. Thank you so much for sharing your top 10 list. And, I was trying to think of a couple of themes that flowed throughout all 10 of them. Certainly COVID and the pandemic is one of them. That touches almost all of those top 10 issues. But the other thing that came to mind was a matter of equity and the seeming growing inequity in access to higher education. I'm wondering if you saw that as well.
Yes. I mean, look, under the pandemic financially was great for Harvard and Yale and Princeton. If you had $1 billion in the bank, it became $2 billion. But look at higher ed. You don't have $1 billion endowment, let alone a $40 billion endowment. And that's the reality. Most colleges didn't have the money. They didn't benefit from doing well. And Harvard, most Harvard students, well, they did have the resources to study online, but not most of your students. And it's terrible what it's done to, at the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't expect Wall Street to so favor the wealthy. And now it's sort of, just a given. But because it has, there's been a huge growth in inequities.
Yeah, and the way we've tried to address that at Connecticut's community colleges, particularly here at Middlesex, is to make sure that for the spring 2022 semester, that if your class was scheduled on ground, it stays on ground. We're starting on time and on schedule here. A bit of a risk because of the public health situation, but Connecticut is well vaccinated, and we are hoping that our students continue to be vaccinated and get tested if they're not. But we thought it was just fundamentally unfair to entice students to come to campus and then take that away from them and say, hey, you're going to start online. We don't want them to rely on their phones to be their lifeline for school. And despite that, we have used federal money to purchase a lot of technology upgrades and loaner equipment for students to borrow from the college.
But I'd be wary only because I don't think there's another federal support coming.
No.
And so the federal funds have been great for institutions like yours, but I think you've got it all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We're in the final throes of using the federal relief money that has come our way to provide our students with some financial relief, but also to improve our workforce development programs to give students short-term training to get them jobs in this changing economy. But we are really concerned about next year's budget once those funds dry up. So, but yeah, thank you. Point well taken. So on that note, I want to thank you, Scott Jaschik, the editor of Inside Higher Ed, for joining me today on Middlesex Moments.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you do get to learn more about your public community college here in Middlesex County. For everyone at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we'll see you next week.